I arrived 15 minutes before the hearing. No chauffeur. No security detail. No entourage. Just me, Nicole Jenkins. Not the daughter. Not the sister. Just a woman who rose from the wreckage her family left behind. The courtroom smelled of old varnish and faded perfume. My heels clicked once against the polished floor, then fell silent on the carpet. I chose the last row, a seat I knew well. It had always been my place in their lives. From a distance, I watched Ralph, my brother, the favored one, nervously adjust his tie at the defendant's table. He was flanked by a sharply dressed attorney and our mother Lorraine, whose pearl necklace looked like it might strangle her. "She's not coming," she whispered to Ralph, glancing toward the entrance. "She never does." I allowed myself a quiet, sharp smile. That was the point. The judge entered. Papers rustled. The proceedings began. Then came a pause. His eyes swept the room and landed on me. Recognition flared like a struck match. "Mayor Nicole Jenkins?" he asked, disbelief tightening his voice. All heads turned. Gasps flickered through the courtroom like moths caught in light. Ralph's mouth fell open. Lorraine's face drained of color. I rose slowly. "Present, Your Honor." As a private citizen. The judge cleared his throat, steadied himself, and made a note. But something had shifted. The entire room felt it. The air folded differently around us now. Ralph leaned toward our mother. "She's the mayor?" he whispered. "I thought she lost that race." Lorraine hissed. "I didn't even know she ran." But I had. And I'd won, by 1.4 million votes. The entire city had known. Except them. I sat down again, letting the silence settle over the room like dust on old memories. They had erased me. Dismissed me. Mocked my ambition. But now, they'd remember every word they once threw at me like daggers. Not because I said anything, but because I no longer needed to. In that back row, I had become the seat no one could overlook. The courtroom buzzed like a hive disturbed. Reporters crept in quietly. Even the stenographer straightened in her chair. The judge called a brief recess, clearly needing a moment to recalibrate. I stayed in my seat, eyes forward, saying nothing. Across the aisle, Lorraine stared at me as if seeing a ghost. Her lips moved, but I heard no sound. Ralph turned and looked at me, really looked, for the first time in 10 years. His eyes were full of recognition and disbelief. He resembled our father in that moment, caught in a lie, defensive, arrogant, and suddenly small. During the break, I rose and walked slowly into the corridor. Not because I needed air, but because I wanted them to see I wasn't hiding. I passed both of them without looking. "Nikki," Lorraine hissed, seizing my wrist. "What is this? Some kind of power play?" I looked at her hand, then at her. "No," I said calmly, freeing myself from her grip. "Just here to support family." I left her standing there, mouth ajar, her reign of entitlement toppled by one sentence. Back in the courtroom, everything had shifted. The judge returned with a more cautious tone. Almost immediately, he recused himself, citing a conflict of interest. But we all knew what that meant. Power had entered the room, and the scales had tilted. I said nothing. I didn't need to. My silence spoke volumes. They could stew in the consequences of what they'd overlooked for years, me. Outside, the press had circled like wolves. "Mayor Jenkins, a quick comment? Is your presence here connected to your brother's case?" I gave them nothing. A brief nod. A polite, closed-lipped smile. Then I walked away. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and turned off my phone. The headlines were already circulating. Mayor attends brother's trial. No statement issued. Good. Let them speculate. Let them wonder. Because sometimes, silence, when wielded with precision, is louder than 1,000 speeches. The first call came just after midnight. I was brushing my teeth, wearing the old college sweatshirt they used to mock, when my phone lit up. "Mom." I let it ring. Then another call, "Ralph." Then again. And again. Like a scratched record skipping on regret. I finally picked up on the 5th call. Not out of kindness. Curiosity. "Nicole, please," Lorraine began, her voice trembling with desperation. "They're talking jail time. You know how the press can be. This could ruin his life." I sat at the kitchen counter, calmly sipping water. Didn't seem to concern you when you were telling the family I'd never amount to anything. Don't be cruel, she snapped. This isn't about the past. It's always been about the past, I said evenly. That's why you only call when you need something. Silence. Then a heavy sigh. He's your brother. No, I said slowly. He was your golden boy. Now he's just another adult with a record. She hung up. The next morning, Ralph tried. Nikki, come on, he said when I answered. I made mistakes, yeah. But you're the mayor. A call from you could make this disappear. I walked to the window. Rain traced slow, steady lines down the glass, quiet and unrelenting. And where were you, I asked, not turning around, when they laughed at my campaign? When you told Dad I was humiliating the family? Ralph didn't answer. Choices have consequences, I said. I didn't make you get behind the wheel drunk. And I won't pretend it didn't happen. You really think you're better than us now? He snapped, voice low and angry. No, I replied, calm and steady. I've always been. You just refused to see it. Then I hung up. That night, I stared at the blinking screen, missed calls piling up, voicemails stacking like apologies too late to matter. I deleted every one. Once, they had wiped me from their lives. Now, I had rewritten the narrative. And I wouldn't let myself be reduced to a footnote in their version of the story. A week after the trial, my inbox lit up with an unexpected message from Judge Halbert. Mayor Jenkins, your silent presence changed the temperature of that courtroom in a way no words ever could. We'll be referencing it in judicial ethics seminars. With respect, thank you. I read it twice, not for affirmation, but because it was poetic justice. The silence they once mistook for weakness had become a case study. My quiet had echoed louder than their insults ever had. Meanwhile, the media frenzy intensified. Mayor breaks silence with presence. Family stunned. Jenkins, once overlooked, now redefines courtroom impact. Mayor or myth? The woman they dismissed now reshapes the narrative. I declined every interview. I didn't need to speak. The headlines were doing it for me. But the calls didn't stop. This time, it was Aunt Virginia, the same woman who once told me I'd never survive without a husband or a rich man to lean on. Nicole, darling, she cooed through the speakerphone. We all make youthful mistakes. But family's family, you know. Maybe if you could talk to the judge, ask for a little leniency. I leaned back in my office chair, staring out at the city skyline. Funny, Aunt Virginia. I don't recall anyone calling when I was sleeping in my car between campaign stops. Don't be petty, she snapped. We're trying to make amends. No, I said, voice soft but unwavering. You're not repairing anything. You're bargaining with someone you once discarded. I hung up. Each plea was the same, packaged in shallow concern, wrapped in entitlement. They still saw me as the daughter, the niece, the sister. Never as the woman I had become. Not as Mayor Nicole Jenkins, the woman who restructured public housing, who slashed citywide hospital wait times by 38%, who rose from ashes without looking back. And Ralph, he still hadn't changed. A journalist called to say he'd been ranting, telling anyone who would listen that I'd ruined his life. But I hadn't destroyed anything. I simply stopped rescuing people who never once showed up for me. Let them talk. Let the myth grow. I was no longer a character in their narrative. I had written my own. At the inauguration ceremony, the assembly hall burst into applause as Judge Halbert took the podium. And lastly, he said, scanning the crowd, thank you to Mayor Nicole Jenkins, whose silence reminded us of the gravity integrity carries inside a courtroom. History will remember her, even if her own family tried not to. Her presence will be studied for years to come. The room rose in a standing ovation. I stayed seated. Later that evening, as I returned home, Ralph was waiting outside my building, hands buried in the pockets of his hoodie, eyes smoldering with resentment. You watched me fall, he said bitterly. You could have stopped it. I tilted my head slightly. I didn't hand you the bottle, Ralph. You made your choice. I'm your brother. No, I said coldly. I was your family when it suited you. Now I'm just a reckoning. He muttered something I didn't catch and turned, vanishing into the night. Inside, I switched on the lamp in my study. The soft glow caught 2 framed photos on the shelf. The first, a picture of 8-year-old me, gap-toothed and beaming, clutching a homemade award. No one had shown up to see me win it. The second, my mayoral portrait. Tailored suit. Steady gaze. Quiet strength. My phone buzzed again. Mom. I watched it ring. Then I blocked the number. Leaning back in my chair, I whispered, to no one in particular. They erased me from their story. So I wrote myself into history,